Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking to Dr. Khurshid Ahmed. He's a professor of computer science at University of Dublin's Trinity College. Professor Khurshid, what is the impact of social media and what does it involve?
Well, social media is a new thing which encourages, if you like, we're talking about lack of communication, person-to-person communication. But it has been used in some very, very diverse areas of our activities. For instance, social media analysis is now, in some financial circles, a must, because social media, they marketing and finance. Social media conveys my sentiment. You know, sentiment is something quite nebulous subject. So my likes and dislikes translate into my positive and negative sentiments. And it is a big question in financial markets and commodity markets whether my sentiment will impact on the prices. Of course, normally prices reflect the sentiment, and they can change my sentiment, but sometimes sentiment can impact the prices. And that's a great puzzle. So that's one area of social media, Twitter, Facebook, and newer forms like Instagram, Flickr, where you can upload photographs also instantly and share it with the world. And they convey sentiment of the populace towards a product or a service or a financial market like shares and equities. Yeah?
It's increasingly becoming difficult to hide something, isn't it? Like some business secrets, or as we used to learn that if the Governor of Bank of England sneezes, the pound shakes and go up and down.
Well, to this day, if the Governor of Bank of England makes an unannounced speech, markets will move. Because what people want to do in a financial market is to guess the direction in which something is going. Yeah, whether the pound will go up or down.
Yeah.
But if the announcement comes, if some BBC says the Governor of the Bank of England will address, take a press conference suddenly at 5 o'clock. Before 5 o'clock, some people think he will announce a devaluation. Some people think he will announce a revaluation. Now the story is in the middle. Only he knows the truth. Now people are betting. So that creates a nervousness in the market. And then you can't tell the prices. Then we say that unannounced speech is an affect of the market. Now that unannounced speech was nothing. If you didn't have in those days when we had terrestrial television, only a few people knew. But now that unannounced occasion is announced throughout the world, and that it travels the speed of light, and everybody seems to know about it. And everybody has ready access to financial markets now. You can sit at your home and buy and sell shares. So that seems to cause a major problem. This is one of my areas of research at the moment. The other area of research, you know, you're talking about inane uses of computers. Turns out during a disaster situation, people, human beings, become a sensor like no other. You know, that we protect our water systems, our energy systems by a variety of sensors, you know. Even in your own house, there are sensors, the water has now come to the full, the supply is stopped, and so on and so forth. So we actually regulate most of our infrastructure using sensors. But turns out during a disaster, people becoming a big sensor because they can absorb lots of information, and in the absence of a non-working infrastructure, you know, first impact of a hurricane would be to take out your power lines, take out your telephone lines. Recently in the US and across the world, including the poorest places in the world like Haiti, people were able to access Twitter and mobile phone communication after everything else was gone. And they can send information to the authorities using something inane, where we post pictures of eating food or going to a wedding. They now post pictures. My situation is bad, the water is coming in, or there's an earthquake, there are 20 people buried under a wall. That information has to be challenged. So increasingly, our disaster management agencies across the world.
You were talking about Hurricane Sandy.
Yes. During Hurricane Sandy, it turned out that the most infrastructure was under a lot of pressure. And the telephone lines to Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is the key emergency management agency created by the US government to allow a number of different agencies like health, police, social welfare, medical services to work together, coordinate. It advertised on its website, please do not telephone landline numbers because the landline numbers are congested. Please use Twitter or YouTube or our websites. Because you can run a computer nowadays on fairly low power, or at least you can run it without any power if your batteries are charged for 2 or 3 hours. So it's a revolutionary thing. The people have become censors. They always were censors, but 50 years ago, when there was a flood in Bangladesh, if you shouted there's flood, nobody could hear it. But now you can broadcast it on your mobile phone. So the authorities will know you've been flooded in a remote area. So I find great encouragement to see this technology being used in this fashion. That I can detect the movement of the market and I can detect people in peril. Both of these things are very empowering for us.
And also they are providing much to the pleasure of those who think that the computer is taking away our jobs. They are also providing employment, isn't it?
Yes. I did ask this question, you know, when I used to do computer-assisted learning. So I was sent on a study tour of USA in 1979. And I was in a science museum equivalent where people could come and play with scientific instruments, children especially, to encourage science. It was called Berkeley Museum of Science. So I went to visit them, how they use computers for this. And then we were having lunch in a restaurant which overlooked the Golden Gate Bridge. And you know there's an ocean mist which covers the bridge every so often.
Yeah.
So the director said, I asked the same question you asked me, why are we producing this technology which will make people unemployed? Oh, he said, the bridge is gone. I said, how is this the answer to my question? He said, the only thing I'll say to you, this may be an apocryphal statistics, but let me give it to you. Since the war, 1945, automation has doubled, unemployment has quadrupled. Now we have a whole bunch of industry now come about. So we have closed down mines in this country.
The population has gone up too.
Yes. The globe has 6 billion more people, and as far as I know, the unemployment rate is not 100%. No. It's tens of percent, and in some areas it's pretty bad. But on the whole, most people are working. So there are new employment opportunities. Bangladesh again is a very good example. Grameen Bank had Grameen phones, and they have under 500,000 telephone ladies whose job it is to sell SIMs, rent out SIMs, or rent out mobile phones for those who don't have it. Now you know, in every, if you go to the subcontinent, you go to the Panwala shop, he used to sell cigarettes and sweets. Now he also sells you SIMs and SIM cards.
And he tops up.
And he tops up. So this employment opportunity nobody had seen coming.
And the level of topping up is 10 taka, 20 taka, 30 taka, see? And he has an account, see? He has a notebook, an account for everybody.
So the telephone ladies is a very liberating thought for me, because it also buckled the whole socio-economic structure, because women were not financially empowered, and that kind of activity has done that. I'm not talking about one or two, but I was reading a book about Bangladesh, and it said 400,000 telephone ladies. Now those didn't exist before, and 500,000 jobs is an interesting job. Yes. I'm not saying they're very highly paid job. True. They can run the family, but it's better than not having anything. So
that's the impact of technology on providing employment.
Yes, I mean I think, you know, so let's go back in time. You know, we are sitting at the dawn of the 20th century. Now, what is your basic issue about transportation system, logistics? Horse-driven carriages. We worried about how to raise horses, how to feed them, how to clean after them. That was our main worry.
And clean the roads.
Well, I won't go there. This is dinner time, I think, for some people. But the interesting thing really for me is that somebody comes along and say, I have a new device called automobile, a transportation system which runs itself. Now, what happened then? All the people who were in the horse-driven logistics were unemployed.
Yeah.
But think of the employment opportunities and opportunities generally created for everybody. So there is that.
But what about the horses?
Well, you know, they are an object of curiosity, and then children ride them. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, we discussed before, there is something called disruptive technologies.
Right.
Disruptive technologies disrupt our behavior to a certain extent, and not just behavior, our habits. I mean, there's no God-given rule to have one habit and not the other.
Right.
But when we are faced with a change, we always resist it. And we find all the horror stories, and I'm not saying they're not right, but I look at the upside of it.
Right.
There's plenty of downside. In each technology is more, invades more of your personal space, what we do and where we go, but also allows me to communicate with a wider group of people. So the transportation system is another good example, you know. The people used to say the index of industrialization or progress is the number of canals you had.
Yep.
Then it was number of railroads you have. Then it was number of roads you had. Now number of airports you have. So I think we do change, and we should have some kind of historical
and also the number of computers you have, and the how effective is your cyber network.
Of course, of course. Now you see, that's another big story. It's like having lots of money and not bothering about doors and locks.
Right.
When this thing was invented, it was a scientific curiosity. You know, the internet was, of course, it was invented for a military purpose. That is, what happens, how can, when in the event of a nuclear fallout, when the electricity system will be in peril, how we can have a network computer where some will survive to keep the communication going. There was a military purpose. But now you buy your grocery on the internet, you know. So the change of purpose is also always in sync, as it were, all the time. So yeah.
Well, the social media and its impact that we have just talked about, what are other uses that can be for what is in future?
Well, it is the fool who will predict the future in one form or the other. I think what we are doing with computers now. Well,
we'll leave it for the next segment, and we'll pretend that we are fools, and we will talk about it during the break time. See, we have to take a break, and then when we come back, we'll continue with this discussion. Thank you for being with us. Don't go away. We'll be back soon after this break.